Because listen, it's week one, love, hate. That's why you're really here. Let's waste no time. Jump right into it with the running backs here. And listen, Jay, it's starting off with James Cook against Arizona. This was RB11 in points per game after Joe Brady took over this offense last season.
Yeah, I don't think people think of James Cook as a quintessential kind of workhorse, bell cow type of back, but there are worlds where he could be that this season. The Bills are clearly favored in this game. I think that game script should be favorable to them. And yeah, if they continue to be a kind of run-first type of team, then James Cook, if you can just get rid of kind of the drops and the fumbling issues, then he could be in for a massive game and a massive year.
Matthew?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and the other piece of it here is, so Jay is completely right in terms of the usage we expect him to have. Like, I am as a top 7 running back this week as well. The other thing is and again, you know, it's week one, so we really don't have a ton to go off of. We have some preseason usage. We have what we think will happen, but we also have to think about last year, right? And last year, the Cardinals, no team in the NFL allowed more rushing yards to running backs. No team allowed more fantasy points to running backs. No team allowed more rushes of 10-plus yards than the Arizona Cardinals. So it's an unbelievable matchup for a talented player. Remember, the Bills are 6.5-point favorites, according to our friends at DraftKings. Home favorites by almost a touchdown. I think James Cook gets a ton of work. Top 7 play for me today.
How about
this week, I should say.
How about Kenneth Walker making this list against the Broncos, Matthew? All the preseason buzz is that we could finally see Kenneth Walker have a bigger role in the passing game this year.
Yeah, 100%, and I think that's the key, right? We know about the big play ability. I mean, here's the thing about KW3. I call him KW3. Over the last 2 years, Chris McCaffrey is the only guy, literally the only running back with more plays of 20 or more yards than Ken Walker. Like, he's got that big play ability, and we know what Ryan Grubb's going to want to do. Get the ball in your playmakers' hands, let them get yards after the catch, and so I expect Ken Walker to get a lot more work in the passing game. He's obviously going to be the bell cow between the tackles as well. Last year, Broncos allowed 5.2 yards per carry to running backs. That was most in the NFL. They also allowed the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Again, Seattle favored at home. I think Ken Walker has a big day in terms of usage. I'm as a top 10 play in week one.
Yeah, Matthew, you mentioned the big playability with Ken Walker. I think as much as he did break some runs last year, like, he didn't break the 60-yard type runs that he was in his rookie season when he finished second in Offensive Rookie of the Year. He had 3 60-plus yard runs that year. Last year, he didn't have a run over 45 yards. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but you just kind of add those 3 runs in. The complexion of his whole season looks different, and just a bit more variance than normal for someone like Ken Walker, just with Ryan Grubb coming in, new offense, new system, and it seems like, yeah, he has workhorse potential.
And of course, as Matthew said, the matchup you just have to love against the Broncos. Seattle, one of the bigger favorites of the week. Sometimes those week one spreads can lie to you, but it's looking good for Kenneth Walker against Denver. Matthew, how about Joe Mixon against the Colts? This is a massive division matchup. Obviously, the Texans trade for Joe Mixon. They paid Joe Mixon, and now they hope to unleash Joe Mixon against a division foe.
Right, and I think, you know, again, I think people don't realize how balanced the Texans' offense was, because all the highlights you saw was Stroud to Nico Collins, Stroud to Tank Dell. But I'm telling you, that was a balanced offense last year, over the second half of the year, especially with Devin Singletary. And now they get Joe Mixon, who I would argue is better than Devin Singletary. Right? It's a nice matchup with the Colts, who allowed the 3rd most rushing touchdowns to running backs last year and the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. But again, this is going to be a balanced offense. And I just think if you're the Colts and you're sitting here like, how are we stopping the Texans? Are we gonna double? Are we gonna load the box to stop Joe Mixon and leave either Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, or Nico Collins in single coverage? Or are we going to play too high deep? We're going to have to play back, and we'll give 5 yards of carry up to Joe Mixon. We just don't want to get beat over the top. My expectation here is they're going to play back. They're going to try to protect against the speed of those Texans wide receivers. You're going to see a light box for Joe Mixon, who should get a heavy workload against the Colts. I have him as a top 12 running back in week one.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, Connor, is there's this idea that the Texans are going to be this high-flying passing offense. Like, let's see it first, because last year they were 19th in pass rate, over-expected. I thought to a fault Bobby Slowick just leaned on the run too much. Maybe he takes the shackles off year 2 of C.J. Stroud, but suspect that, you know, at his core he kind of wants to run the ball, and Mixon will be a beneficiary.
And Jay, it feels like the total for this game on DraftKings has kind of reflected that. There's big expectations for not only the Texans and their pass offense, but also on the other side of the ball, the Colts in this.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, this is a massive game. Like, the Texans are 2.5-point favorites. favorites. I mean, it's early, but like this is the type of game that can potentially decide and shape a division. So Joe Mixon, again, like a very kind of unsexy pick. Everyone's been drafting Joe Mixon for years now, but in that offense, he should really produce.
Matthew, some others receiving votes here. Devon Achane, Aaron Jones, Jaleel McLaughlin on this list as well. Who really stands out in this one as we get further down the board, especially McLaughlin against Seattle?
Yeah, that's the one I want to highlight here. Achane and Jones, everyone's that's having them is going to start them as well. I mean, Jones Ivan's a top 20 player. Remember, the Giants allowed the third most rushing yards to running backs last year. But how about Jaleel McLaughlin, who should have a larger role in this offense? Remember, last year, he was 8th in fantasy points per touch. When Jaleel McLaughlin touches the ball, he is effective. And so, you know, he's also got some big playability. 16% of his rushes gained 10 or more yards. That was 4th among qualified running backs. And so, you think about this offense, they're on the road at Seattle. As you mentioned, Connor, they are big underdogs here. You've got a rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, going into Seattle, one of the toughest places to play in the NFL. If you're Sean Payton, what do you want to do? You want to lean on your run game, try to take pressure off the rookie quarterback. And oh, by the way, if you're trailing, you're going to have to throw. Jaleel McLaughlin is their passing down back. So I think a big second half coming from McLaughlin. So he's just, I think, a good flex play this week, given the matchup and his expected role in this offense. I know you love Audric Estime. I do as well. But I think, at least for week one, Jaleel McLaughlin is a sneaky start this week.
Yeah, we're going to be a little patient for the Estime show to take over.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.